The world's longest undefended border has long symbolized the deep partnership between the United States and Canada, a relationship that has stood as a model of peaceful coexistence and cooperation for over a century. This alliance is built on shared values, deep economic integration, and a commitment to mutual security, with both nations often standing shoulder to shoulder on the world stage. For generations, this relationship has been the bedrock of North American stability and prosperity, allowing goods, people, and ideas to flow freely across the border, enriching both societies and fostering a sense of trust. But today, September 23, 2025, that partnership faces its greatest test yet, as tensions reach a boiling point. A trade conflict of unprecedented intensity is shaking the very foundations of trust and cooperation that once seemed unbreakable. What began as technical disputes over tariffs and trade rules has now escalated into a full-blown confrontation over sovereignty, national pride, and economic control. The Trump administration's aggressive new trade posture has upended decades of quiet diplomacy, replacing compromise with confrontation. Sweeping U.S. tariffs, now at levels not seen since the 1930s, have inflicted economic pain on both sides of the border, disrupting industries and livelihoods. Canadian goods now face a punishing 35% levy, creating uncertainty, hostility, and a sense of betrayal among businesses and workers alike. The era of integration has been violently reversed. Economic warfare has replaced partnership, and communities that once thrived on cross-border trade now face an uncertain future. The question is no longer how to strengthen the relationship, but whether it can survive this rupture, or if the damage is already irreversible. The once unthinkable, a fractured North America divided by suspicion and economic barriers, is now a real and worrying possibility, casting a long shadow over the continent's future. At the heart of this crisis is a demand from President Trump, one that has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and left both allies and adversaries scrambling to respond. It's a move that has stunned even seasoned observers, upending expectations of what's possible in North American relations. The administration isn't just seeking trade concessions, it's demanding U.S. control over major Canadian ports like Vancouver and Prince Rupert, two of Canada's most vital gateways to the Pacific and the world. Framed as a national security issue, the White House claims these ports are vulnerabilities that require American oversight, citing threats ranging from drug smuggling to potential terrorist infiltration. The rationale blends security concerns like fentanyl smuggling and illicit trafficking, with long-standing economic grievances about trade imbalances and lost American jobs. A new reciprocity fee would tax all goods entering the U.S. after landing at Canadian ports, aiming to prevent tariff circumvention and close what the administration calls a dangerous loophole. This is the boldest step yet in the administration's economic nationalism, following massive new tariffs on steel, aluminum, and cars, measures that have already strained cross-border industries. The demand for port control challenges Canada's sovereignty in a way usually reserved for defeated nations, not close allies, and has left Canadian leaders grappling with an unprecedented dilemma. It tells Canada its management of critical infrastructure is inadequate and must yield to U.S. authority, a message that stings in a country proud of its independence. This is not negotiation, it's an ultimatum, delivered with the weight of American power and the threat of further economic pain. Canada now faces a choice: compromise its sovereignty and accept foreign control over its ports, or stand firm and risk further escalation, with all the uncertainty and potential fallout that entails. The line in the sand has been drawn, and the world is watching to see which side Canada will choose. Canada's response has been swift and resolute. Prime Minister Mark Carney, with deep experience in global finance, has met Trump's demands with calm defiance. His message is clear: Canada's ports are not for sale. This phrase has become a rallying cry, encapsulating the principle that Canadian sovereignty is non-negotiable. Carney has reframed the issue as a defense of national dignity, not just trade policy. While rejecting U.S. control, Canada has increased its own border security and appointed a fentanyl czar, showing commitment to continental security on its own terms. In retaliation, Ottawa has imposed a 25% tariff on $30 billion of U.S. goods, with plans for more if the conflict escalates. Canada's two-pronged strategy: defend sovereignty and retaliate economically. The message is unmistakable: Canada will not be bullied. The ongoing trade war and the threat of a port standoff are pushing the highly integrated North American supply chain to its breaking point, creating a sense of urgency and anxiety across the continent. For decades, businesses have depended on seamless cross-border logistics, with major ports like Vancouver and Prince Rupert acting as vital continental gateways. These ports are not just entry points, they are lifelines for industries ranging from automotive to agriculture, ensuring goods move efficiently between countries. If new tariffs and stricter border inspections are implemented, chaos will follow. Costs will soar, delays will multiply, and established trade routes could be devastated almost overnight, disrupting supply chains that took years to build. U.S. importers who rely on Canadian ports now face skyrocketing expenses and logistical nightmares, as every shipment becomes more complicated and expensive to move. The proposed 25% tariff on vehicles could raise the price of a single truck by $35,000, a staggering increase that threatens to cripple the transportation sector and ripple through the entire economy. Over 40% of big rigs sold in the U.S. are imported from Canada and Mexico. This single measure threatens the backbone of North American commerce, putting thousands of jobs and countless businesses at risk. Companies like FedEx are already projecting massive losses, warning that these costs will inevitably be passed on to consumers and workers, making everyday goods more expensive and jobs less secure. Goldman Sachs warns that U.S. consumers are absorbing most of the tariff costs, with prices for cars, groceries, and other essentials rising steadily, squeezing household budgets across the country. Uncertainty is stalling investment and hiring, as companies hesitate to expand or bring on new workers. Layoffs loom on the horizon, threatening the livelihoods of thousands. The intricate web of cross-border production that supports millions of jobs and underpins the North American economy is now at risk of unraveling, with consequences that could be felt for years to come. The Trump administration's trade policies have sparked alarm among U.S. businesses. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other groups warn of dire consequences if the trade war with Canada continues. For these businesses, Canadian ports are essential, not vulnerabilities. New tariffs and border chaos threaten to undo decades of investment in integrated supply chains. The automotive industry is especially anxious. Just-in-time manufacturing depends on smooth cross-border flows. The 25% tariff on imported cars and new investigations into truck parts could force production cuts and price hikes. Small and medium suppliers face existential threats. Global companies like Porsche and FedEx are already slashing profit outlooks and projecting huge losses. These are not abstract numbers, they reflect real damage to American competitiveness. The business community's message: this path leads to economic self-harm and higher prices for all. The Trump administration justifies its actions as national security measures, citing threats like fentanyl smuggling. But many experts see this as a pretext for economic protectionism. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act was meant for rare emergencies, not to renegotiate trade with allies. U.S. and Canadian security agencies have long cooperated closely, making the demand for port control seem more about leverage than safety. Critics argue that if security were the true goal, solutions could be found through joint efforts and new technologies. Instead, the administration's approach signals a shift toward unilateral, nationalist control. The real debate: is this about security, or about dismantling global supply chains for political gain? The answer will shape the future of North American cooperation. This crisis stands in stark contrast to a century of U.S.-Canadian cooperation. The alliance was forged in world wars and solidified during the Cold War with NORAD and the Five Eyes intelligence network. Daily, both nations' agencies collaborate on security, trade, and border management. The 1989 Free Trade Agreement and NAFTA unleashed decades of growth and integration. Quiet diplomacy and mutual trust were the norm, even during disputes. Now, public ultimatums and suspicion threaten to unravel this legacy. The Trump administration's approach replaces trust with suspicion, treating a partner as a potential adversary. The anxiety is palpable, not just among leaders, but within defense and intelligence communities on both sides. The U.S.-Canada trade conflict is part of a broader global trade war. The Trump administration's willingness to challenge even close allies sends a message: no relationship is safe from American economic pressure. Countries like South Korea and Switzerland are scrambling to avoid punitive US measures, sometimes at great cost. These are not friendly negotiations, they're responses to coercion. Meanwhile, global powers like China are moving to fill the void, shifting trade away from the US. The legal foundations of the global trading system are under assault, with the World Trade Organization's authority challenged. A US court ruling against the president's emergency tariff powers now awaits Supreme Court review. If unchecked, this could permanently alter the balance of power in the US government. The rules-based international order America built is now at risk. The world is watching and recalibrating. As 2025 draws to a close, the future of the US-Canada relationship is deeply uncertain. The conflict over Canadian ports has driven the nations further apart than ever before. Trust, built over generations, has been severely damaged. Tariffs and retaliation are inflicting real economic pain with no end in sight. Both leaders are politically boxed in, making compromise unlikely. Businesses are rerouting supply chains and disentangling cross-border operations, a process that's hard to reverse. A permanent decoupling of the US and Canadian economies is now possible, leaving both poorer and less competitive. Decades of integration could be undone in just a few years. The path forward depends on whether leaders can rediscover partnership and cooperation. The special relationship can no longer be taken for granted. Its survival now demands true statesmanship.